Guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and thank you very much for taking some time to swing by the channel and spend some time with me on the video. Really appreciate that. And got a good video for y'all today, in my opinion. We're going to show and talk about fishing big glide baits and big swim baits in the fall time of the year. It's just going to be coming up before we know about it. 2 months from now, we're going to be in prime glide bait, swim bait season, and I want to sort of get you guys prepped for that because thing about fishing a big glide bait and a swim bait, it's a very situational technique. This particular way that I'm going to talk about fishing, you have to have the exact right set of conditions, type of day, and the exact baits, know where to throw them at. And once you get all that combination together, it can really pay off big time because one of the things about this, you don't have, there's not a technique that's going to give you a better chance to catch really big fish than the big glide bait and swim bait. Also, guys, before we get started, since we're talking about fall fishing, just a quick invitation to please swing by fishthemoment.com. Check out our fall Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns I built for Fish the Moment. These maps will give you some great places to start out for your fall fishing on all the lakes across the country. And it's a really good resource to learn more about your favorite lake or a lake you've never been onto. So I'll link that in the description of the video. Appreciate that. Okay, guys, I want to cover quite a bit of stuff in this. I want to cover the lures. I want to cover the type of water you need to be in and the type of structures to fish it in, because it's not hard, but at the same time, it takes a commitment. And what I mean by commitment is this requires a shift in the way that you think about fishing when you get into this particular style of fishing, because right off the bat, you have to commit to it knowing that you're not going to get very many bites. You're simply not. When you throw these big baits out there, if you have a day where you get 5 or 6 or 7 bites on it, you've had an awesome day on the water. A lot of times you won't get a bite. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 bites. Sometimes you get a couple fish following it. But the thing about it, and most of these times, every time you get a bite or you see one following, the thing's freaking that big. It's freaking giant bass that go after these things. That's why it's so addictive, because thing about glide bait fishing and what keeps me addicted to it is the fish I see following this bait and the ones that come up and hit it, or you catch them or lose them or whatever. But it is an exciting way to fish, but you do have to have this mental shift about going out there and knowing you're not going to get many bites. And the best way to learn on these big glide baits is you have to commit to that, and you have to just take nothing in the boat except big glide baits and big swim baits. Take 2 or 3 of each, couple rods to throw them on, and don't even give yourself a chance to do anything else. And that's how you learn how to do it. And the people that are successful fishing these big glide baits and swim baits are the people that do that. Because here's what most people do, in my opinion. They hear about all these giant bass people catch on them, and they'll go out on the lake and they'll throw it for 30, 40 minutes and get tired of it because the things are heavy and they're hard to throw. And then they just give up on it if they don't get a bite after 30 or 40 minutes. You'll never get any good at it if you do that. So that requires that type of a commitment before you get into it. So next I want to talk about the baits, and then we'll get into the type of areas a little bit. Now there's 3 primary baits that I really like for my big glide bait, swim bait fishing. The first one is this big honking Megabass 10-inch Magdraft. This looks like a giant gizzard shad. I've caught 2-pounders on it, guys. You can catch giants on it and you can catch 2-pounders on it. But this thing, when it comes through the water, the head moves slow like that along with the tail. It looks like just a live big gizzard shad coming through the water. So that's one of my favorites there. And my next one, this is a homemade glide bait. An angler named Rod Hallman makes these for me. But there's a lot of ones that are similar. Like I said, I'll link all this stuff on my Tackle Warehouse link, all the glide bait, swim baits. If you guys want to get a couple, you can use that link and you can see all the different variations they have. But it's a hard swim bait that's usually jointed like this. And these things, guys, in the water, they look so realistic. Look how realistic that thing is. It looks just like a big shad. And that's one of the things that gives you confidence in them, is to see how realistic these things are. And they just look like something's going to hit them every cast. And the final ones I use are these Megabass eye slides here. They got the eye slide 187 and the eye slide 262. This is actually the bait that Oliver Nye, who's the foremost big glide bait fisherman in the world, he won the big bass bash up at Lake of the Ozarks on this exact bait a few years ago. So in the fall time of the year, what I'm talking about. So those are the baits that I use. And another thing with this, once you get these baits, guys, you have got to have some specialized equipment to throw it on. You need an 8-foot heavy action rod. Again, I'll link all the equipment and everything in my Tackle Warehouse link. If you try to throw something like this iSlide 262 on a flipping stick, it feels like the flipping stick's gonna break. This thing weighs 6 ounces, so it's a heavy, heavy bait. So you have to have a heavy action rod, 8 foot. That's the main thing about it. And your reel, if you're a serious big glide bait, big swim bait fisherman, you need a large diameter, large capacity reel with 25-pound test Seaguar VisX fluorocarbon is what I throw on it. A lot of the big glide bait guys, they use 30-pound mono. I don't know many guys at all that use a braided line. Most of them use the monofilament or the fluorocarbon, 25 to 30-pound test most of the time. So that's the setup for that. Now, the next situation, which is important, let's talk about the ideal scenario and the conditions that you have to catch them on these big glide baits. First of all, in the fall time of the year, it is the best time to fish it during there's about a 3 or 4 week window that this works in the fall time of the year. And for me, it's usually around mid-October to mid-November. Depending upon what part of the country you're in, that can vary earlier or later. But you really need to have it. What I like to have is that water temperature between 55 and 65 degrees. That's the number one thing. Fall time of the year, 55 to 65 degrees. The second thing is you have to have the right water clarity. Now, you can catch fish on these things in a variety of different water clarities, but from my experience in fishing the big giant ones, you need to have water visibility anywhere between, say, 3.5 to 6 feet. These are sight baits. That's the thing. That's why you have to have clear water, because these fish look at these things and they track them from a long way. So 3.5 to 6, or maybe 3 to 6 foot of visibility, maybe even 3 to 8 foot of visibility, but clear water where you can see the things coming through the water when you fish them. Next thing you have to have, in addition to that, you have to have the right type of day. And you have to have the right type of day for this is you have to have a prefrontal day where you've got a southerly airflow with clouds. So the best scenario, as far as the perfect situation, in my opinion, is go to a lake, water temperature is 55 to 65 degrees. I've got 4 to 5 foot of visibility. I've got, the cloudy weather conditions. I've got some wind coming out at about probably 10 to 15, maybe 20 miles an hour. Southerly airflow with a falling barometric pressure. In other words, like those warm days in the fall when you got a front on the way. If you have those type of conditions, guys, I can promise you put yourself in a situation where your chances of catching one go through the roof. Now, I'm not saying you can't catch them on different type of days. Yeah, I've caught them on sunny days. I've caught them, when the wind hasn't been blowing very much, but that is the ideal situation to fish them in that I just described there. So to make it easy on yourself, pay attention to the weather forecast starting about mid-October. And when you have a day like that coming up, that's when you need to be at the lake. Okay, the next thing with it is the type of structures you want to fish it on. Now, this depends completely on your lake, because if you guys fish south where you have a grass lake, that's going to be different than if you fish, lowland reservoir or an Ozark reservoir. But here's the type of areas that I've done best on. Number one is around boat docks. Clearwater boat docks in the fall time of the year. A lot of people are all over the country. That's a good way to catch them. Throw these things right next to those Clearwater boat docks. The second pattern that I use with them is fishing in parallel to steep, bluffy, rocky banks. So channel banks, places where the main channel comes in close to the bank, and it can be a vertical bluff, it can be a 45-degree angle, sharp bluff that comes off into deep water, but some type of a deep, sharp bank that drops off swiftly into deep water. And the third type of areas is around any type of main lake or secondary point. Now, all these type of areas, they really need to have some type of wind hitting them. You need to have wind coming in on that dock. You need to have wind coming in on that steep bank. You need to have wind coming in on that point. And most of the time, it needs to be, the bait needs to be over a little bit deeper water, because when you got one of these big honking glide baits coming through the water like this, rarely are you going to get a horizontal strike, because rarely you're going to reel it through the shallow water and something comes from that. These big fish are going to come up on these baits out of deeper water. So I like to fish them over, anywhere between 5 to 20 foot of water. Ideally, I like to fish them over about, say, 8 to 15 foot of water in that clear water. That seems to be the depth that pulls those bigger fish up to get them. And another thing with it, I'll leave you with one final tip as far as how to retrieve it. Most people, you can fish them just reeling them straight in, because they sort of go slide like that if you just reel them. but fish them like a jerk bait. Go like that and jerk it like that, so it just goes boom, 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 and just go boom, 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 and it just gives it more of a realistic action. And when you see one following it, which you will see more fish following this bait than actually hit it, don't ever slow it down or stop it, because when they get too good of a look at this, they're never going to bite it. So if you're fishing this thing like this and all of a sudden you see this big missile coming up from behind it, speed the thing up like that and try to get it away. It's like you see one behind it, track, say you're fishing it like this, coming through there, and you see one, just speed it up like that. And that fish is either gonna go after it and nail it, or they're not gonna touch it at all. But it gives them, it creates a reaction strike for them. But in other words, don't ever give them a chance to look at the thing too much, because they'll never hit it if they do. So anyway, guys, specialized technique. If you want to try it this fall, I just gave you the juice on how to do it and how to catch one on it. So let me know. Hope it works for you guys, and hope you catch some big ones doing it. We'll see y'all.